Let me thank the organizers. I don't know which of those is in the audience right now, but our economic survey for last year said that India is now at a post-COVID moment, and I think the fact that Raisina is back in full glory is a mark of that. So this is meant to be a scene setter, just to remind yourselves that what we're talking about is just transitions, old fuels, new energy, and persistent aspirations. And the time given to me is 10 minutes, and I do hope to stay within that. So what I'm going to talk about as the head of, or the vice chairman of, an organization called NITI Aayog, which is India's institution for indicative planning. I am the vice chairman because the Prime Minister is the chairman and takes a great deal of interest in what my organization does. What I was going to do was touch on 3 or 4 points connected with the energy transition. And I might say that some of my thinking on this is colored by my experience as the chief economist of Shell. And I'm very pleased that my successor in that role, Malika Ishwaran, is in the audience. So the points I'm going to touch on are essentially 4. One is that there can be no doubting the commitment of India to the energy transition, and I'll give a few facts about that. The second is to talk about getting real about the energy transition rather than what one might call virtue signaling. Where exactly are we in the phasing out of fossil fuels? Third, the innate tensions for a country which is hitting its stride in industrial development to have that development take place at a moment of churn in the global energy system. And then finally, quite how much should India depend on the outside world, given past experience with commitments made by advanced countries in the climate area and elsewhere, and therefore, what does that actually imply for India's own strategy? So just briefly on the commitment that India has made to the energy transition. The elements are increasing electrification, higher penetration of cleaner fuels in the energy mix, accelerated adoption of energy efficient technologies, rising digitalization, improved material efficiencies, and aggressive moves towards a circular economy. Some of these, many of these are connected with mitigation. Some of them are concerned with adaptation, and some of them are also concerned with the material footprint. While India's energy demand is growing at 4% a year, almost 4 times the international level, it has also been investing significantly in clean energy, and 40% of total installed power capacity is from non-fossil sources. I have to be careful. And India levies significant taxes on carbon-emitting fossil fuels. The point I want to make is that the commitment is there, the commitment is real. But that has to be seen against a global scenario where more than 85% of the energy used continues to be fossil fuel based. And I know that the IEA is taking comfort from the fact that investment in renewables is now equaling that of investment in fossils. But we have also seen and heard, particularly at COP27, that one of the consequences of inadequate investment in oil and gas has been to confront the whole world, and including particularly emerging markets, with a great deal of volatility in energy prices. So when I talk about virtue signaling, what I have in mind is that, yes, there are a great deal of theatrics connected with the actions of the international oil majors, and the fact that I worked at Shell has made me alert to this, but not particularly, if you like, partisan on this. But I think we all need to recognize two things. One is, and I'm talking about hydrocarbons, I won't get into coal just now, but which is that the great bulk of production of hydrocarbons is by national oil companies, even though most of the attention is on the international oil majors. And secondly, what I've mentioned already, that there is significant depletion of productive capacity that takes place that requires investment. And so I think a country like India, which is concerned with, as it were, energy security, has to be asking what is the likely time path of the future availability of hydrocarbons and other fossil fuels, so it can describe its own future long-term trajectory. Now, it's become something of an article of faith that now renewables are equally are cheaper than fossils, but a recent study by McKinsey finds that the delivered cost of electricity will be 20% higher in 2050 as compared to 2020 on account of increases in costs associated with grid flexibility, transmission, and distribution. So for a poor country that wishes to provide energy security, energy access, these are real choices. And I would just crystallize those choices in the following dilemmas. One is that the renewable transition clearly depends or is facilitated by high fossil fuel prices. But that keeping fossil fuel prices high, if the expectation is that fossils are going to be a diminishing part of the global energy mix, leads immediately to what has been called the green dilemma, which is that as the expectation of future fossil fuel prices rising diminishes, there will be more pressure to pump what's in the ground. Yeah. Sorry? Yeah, exactly. Yeah, my last point. And so we are faced with what exactly is the global community, how would it organize persistently high fossil fuel prices in the face of these economic incentives that are associated with the phasing out of fossil fuel prices, which probably point to cheaper fossil fuel prices rather than more expensive in the future. And then second, that energy access for the poor means cheaper energy, but ensuring cheaper energy on the basis of a more renewable-oriented policy mix is going to require nimble footwork by the government. So my final points are two. One is, I think the world needs to have greater clarity about the policies that are going to bring about this transition. I think that economists tend to go for carbon taxes, but I think India has essentially decided on cap and trade. And my final point is that the internal case is going to be for this transition might well have to be on the basis of collateral benefits and not only contribution to a global public good. I was going to talk about what we might reasonably expect in terms of financial and technological support from the rest of the world, but since I've exceeded my time, I'll just thank the chair and the organizers for their invitation, the audience for its indulgence, and return to lunch. Thank you.